Thank you for joining us. We've got a couple hundred people in here right now, which is awesome. So it's going to be a good one today. Please ask your questions as we go. You can tweet at us using the hashtag SHWebinar as we go along. But the topic for today, first of all, I'm Max Altschuler, CEO of Sales Hacker. Sorry about that. Topic for today is art and science of the perfect sales pitch. And we're here with Michael Pici from HubSpot, who's going to be helping us out. And he's been looking not only at his own organization, but in HubSpot's place, in the sales ecosystem. Been seeing how other companies are doing this kind of stuff. Has a lot of experience, a lot of wisdom in this area. Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Awesome. Thanks, Max. I'm really excited to be here. I love Sales Hacker. And thanks, everyone, for taking the time out of the day. It's super exciting to be with you, and hope I can give you some really awesome stuff that you can take away, a couple nuggets for sure. I started at HubSpot in 2012. Before I started, I actually was a door-to-door insurance salesperson. So completely understand what it's like to be out there grinding, and have done it myself not too long ago. At HubSpot, I was actually the first customer-facing employee to join our sales solutions division. And I grew that business from zero revenue and really a product market fit stage all the way up through very successful, what you would, I guess, call an internal acquisition of our business. And I now lead an inside sales team of approximately 100 salespeople at HubSpot. So kind of seen it from door to door all the way up through leading a pretty significant sales organization, and really excited to share my insights and some things I've learned along the way and things that have worked well for us here at HubSpot.
Excellent. So you're pretty familiar with sales pitches, both from a operator standpoint all the way through somebody managing a team. So when you got this process started at HubSpot, or when you do maybe a new go-to-market or something like that, what's the foundation look like? What's the first step for you when you're kind of crafting this pitch and figuring out where to start?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So I'm assuming that a lot of folks on the call today, just by some of the names I've seen in the registration, things like that, are in earlier stage companies who are really looking to grow and who are in that scale up mode. A lot of times people are always looking for the answer on how do we get the perfect sales pitch, how do we implement the perfect sales pitch, and I say don't start with the pitch, start with the process that you're going to use to refine your pitch over time. So an example of that is, how do you set up a framework that's a starting point, right? So any place that you choose to start is going to be just that. It's a starting place. But what does your process look like over time to constantly pressure test situations that you're coming up against in real life against the structure that you've gone ahead and created? And how do you develop and change that structure over time to match what you're actually seeing as most successful in the market and what's resonating most? So an example of that is like on our team now, even at the scale that we're at with a tremendous amount of salespeople in our organization, we run a division-wide film review that happens every Monday from 5:30 to 6:30 at night, and the whole division comes and we listen to a call together. And we basically pressure test that call up against the current call structure that we're trying to use, and we ask ourselves, how is it? Are we missing key information? Are we constantly finding ourselves asking the same questions over and over again? Are we constantly finding the same patterns that we're just not hitting on? And then each team during the week breaks down into an individual team film review where they're, again, working on pressure testing and coming up with a little bit of a adjustment to that structure, and then we're bringing those learnings back later on. So I think over time you want to say to yourself, what is a structure and a framework that we're going to use to actually learn together, not necessarily what is that perfect pitch right from day one.
What are some of those patterns that you mentioned that you're looking for?
Yeah, so I think the patterns are typically what you'll hear is you'll hear a call that is relatively, if you walk into any sales organization off the street, what my guess is what you're gonna hear is you're gonna hear telephone conversations that have less than substantial amounts of information. And you're going to hear a room full of people having a discussion about how we should be engaging and what products we should offer. Oh, no, I think they're actually a great fit for this product. Or, oh, no. You know what? Based on what I'm thinking here, we should have really sold them this. Or we should. And the fact of the matter is that oftentimes the main thing you hear is that we didn't really have enough information to decide on what the right strategy would be to proceed with that account. We didn't know enough to make the right recommendation to the prospect. So oftentimes in those sessions, it's really coming back to, okay, what information we could have had that would have actually allowed us to make the right recommendation to the prospect, and then how do we figure out how to work getting that information into our discovery matrix or our call template or whatever it is that's going to lead us to a healthier place moving forwards.
Let's talk about the discovery matrix and the call template and preparation a little bit more. How do you have people preparing right now? What's in the matrix? What is in the template? Maybe that's something we can even share if you have an example of after the webinar. We could put the link in the recording. But it'd be great to go a little bit deeper into what your preparation looks like for calls for individual reps. What does that matrix look like? What's that step-by-step kind of plan look like?
Yeah, totally. And I was thinking about this quite a bit before because I know, Max and I had kind of conversed a little bit before the webinar, and he was saying like, hey, you ever see like AIDA or smart selling or solution selling? Like which one of these methodologies do you guys really buy into, and how do you think about that? And it's interesting, like there's so much commonality, I think, between what as salespeople we're trying to learn, like even like BANT, right? BANT is a perfect example of just like a timeless qualification framework that you can implement. However, though, Namely is on, somebody from Namely is on right now, right? The solution that they're out there in the market with is so substantially different than the solution that HubSpot's out there in the market with. It's so different than what somebody else is out there with that there's going to be pieces of that framework that are really going to have to be unique to the specific context that you're working on. So in our world, the way that we're running a qualification today, the structure for specifically the discovery portion of our call sounds like company and personal priorities. What are the big initiatives of the leadership team right now? What is your role? What are your top priorities? What metrics are you trying to achieve? And why did you want to take this call today? What can I actually help you with? From there, we get down into sales and marketing team structure. We're primarily selling growth to small and medium-sized businesses. We need to know how sales works and how marketing works. Who are the players on both sides? How do those organizations work with each other? What is, is it SDR focused? Is it account executive focused? What is that actual go-to-market motion that those teams are doing, and how are those teams organized? From there, we drop down into sales and marketing processes, right? How does the sales team find leads? How are they connecting with leads? How are they managing the deal pipeline? On the marketing side, what is your marketing strategy? Where do you spend on marketing today? How did that spend pan out in terms of ROI last year? How does it look? Down from there is an understanding of what software is implemented at the company. What technology are you using? What systems support your business process? And how do those systems work? How are they working today? What's the gaps? And then finally, we ask questions around a company's ability to purchase and adopt software. So, when you think about, traditional BANT, it qualifies on budget and authority. In our world with software, we're also asking a lot of questions about the ability to actually adopt software and the ability to use something. Even if it was free, we have a lot of free software at HubSpot that we have today, but you still need authority to be able to implement a software system inside of an organization. So what does adoption look like? What does the week after purchase look like? And so that's really the thing. Company and personal priorities, sales and marketing team structure, sales and marketing current process, technology, and then buy and adoption process, and that's kind of like a budget and authority sort of conversation. And that's the discovery framework that we're using today, and we offer a couple sample questions to the team in each of those areas to kind of get them started and get them on the right talk track.
Okay. And with that framework and everything that you just put together, do you then have a script that you use for your reps that they go through all that? How do you know, how do you tell them when to get off script? How do you know when it's time to chase something down a hole, or build a rapport here based on somebody's attitude or mood when you should instead of pushing this a little harder? So I guess that's a two-parter for you. One, do you use a script, and then how do you know when to get off it?
Yeah, no, great point. So if I think about, that was really the kind of questions that we're asking discovery. If I think about the call structure of a sales call a little bit more broadly, what you're going to find is that we set an agenda at the top of the call. We do our discovery, and we ask our discovery questions. From there, we have a middle section of our call, which we call excite and strategize. So how do you get somebody really pumped up about what we're doing? How do you help make the connection between what it is that they're having issues with and what it is that we offer? So excite and strategize is where certainly we have some stories that we have available to us, right? And we may have 4 or 5 different stories that we may tell based on the types of listening we're doing during that discovery process. So that part of the call, definitely there are scripts, and you're telling a story in a pretty similar way based on which story is going to resonate best, based on what you've heard. But I think in the discovery process itself, like if I think about hiring a brand new salesperson and then how my coaching with that salesperson evolves over time, it basically looks like this. When a brand new salesperson joins the organization, if you're coaching them on how to go off and go off script and how to really be very thoughtful about asking deeper, probing questions and how to pull out that real, genuine pain, real sales, they don't have a framework to reference it back to. They don't necessarily always know how to take that and bucket it with where it's supposed to be in the process. So whenever we're coaching, we ask ourselves this question. The first thing we coach on is structure. Are you following the basic structure of the call, and are you compartmentalizing the call in a way that sounds right on the phone and that's really getting us across? For a brand new salesperson, if we bring them into HubSpot and they can just simply execute on the structure that we have, they'll do fine. It's a formula. It works. Now, the second thing is, to your point, the structure should surface nuggets. I think of it like finding a golden nugget, maybe even a chicken nugget. Who knows? But you're going to get a nugget, and then the question is, what do you do with that nugget? Do you dip it? Do you just eat it straight up? Do you put it in some ketchup, barbecue sauce? How do you want to use that nugget? So the idea is, if a salesperson's not following the basic structure, we coach the structure. Once we get the structure tight, now we're starting to listen for those nuggets. And when you hear the nuggets, now we're coaching on how do you drill into that? How do you take that down and develop that thought a little bit further, right? And start to understand what's actually behind that. So that's kind of the way that I treat it. And then from there, we start to work on really making that connection very nice between what we're hearing in that pain and then also what we're showing to that prospect and the way that we're describing our solution within their context. But you got to be patient along that coaching scale.
We got some people asking for examples of what those nuggets might be.
Yeah, totally. So that's a great question. So here's an example. We had a film review session last night, and we were listening to a call from somebody who was asking. They were on the call, and they mentioned that they had just recently. We asked the question of like, what was the question? Oh yeah, like what softwares are you using inside your company now? How does it work? And they told us, oh yeah, we're using we're using Salesforce.com. We just got it implemented. We love it. It's going great. And by the way, we also evaluated Pardot, which is another marketing automation tool, which is competitive to HubSpot, right? They said, oh yeah, we evaluated Pardot, and we decided not to go with it. And our salesperson just went on and they asked the next kind of question that they had on their list. They just moved on from that. Now that was a nugget. A nugget is this prospect just literally said no to a very similar thing that we're trying to sell them. So why did they say no? Why didn't they decide to proceed with it? What was that evaluation like? Why, like, tell us a little bit more about like what you were learning on that track. Like, why were you interested in that? What was really the thing there that ultimately made you decide that wasn't the right path forwards, right? So that was like a little thing that I heard. Like, this person already made a decision against what it is that we're trying to discuss with them here, but we kind of just missed that and just kind of kept going. So that was like an example of like a nugget that was really out there that was that I heard that was pretty significant. So nuggets are generally things that are like decisions that people have made in the past and the way that people have rationalized things in the past, and chances are those same trends are going to occur in the future. How do we find out more about what happened in the past? A nugget might be something like if you're asking about their team and they tell you about a leader that they work with or a decision maker that's on the staff. Say, great, what do you talk to them about? What are your conversations normally like with with Samantha when you meet with her? right? What is Samantha's top priorities right now? How do you interface together? So anything that we're hearing that's going to give us another clue about a decision maker, a past experience, another evaluation, any of these things, I'm listening and I'm trying to dive in more on those types of subjects.
Okay. An interesting one, I guess, is, I think a lot of times people selling software, at least, have problems with the pricing, where the rep doesn't want to talk about pricing early on, but the prospect brings it up immediately. Yep. What are some things that you guys do to either combat that or kind of flow with that? What is something in your process you do around that, or is that something that works in your favor?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends. Like that's a pretty general question on the sense of like when pricing comes up early, right? Because take two different contexts. Like one context here is somebody who comes on the call and they're saying, hey, I've researched your software, I've evaluated it, I've got a basic understanding of how it works, and you know what, I've even tried it, and I want to talk about the price. Mm-hmm. I don't know, like I'm looking at it, right? If I'm a software company and I offer a free version of my software and someone's coming to me and they want to talk about the price, I'd say, great, what do you want to talk about? Why, like, have you already made the decision that this is the right solution for you?
Yeah.
Yes, I have. Okay, great. Talk to me about the price. What do you think of it? Did you look at it on our website? Yeah. Like, what do you think? Now, if this is somebody who is coming to us and they're early on in their education cycle, right, and we don't feel very confident that based on their product usage or their interaction with our brand or whatever these different items are, we don't feel confident that they're truly around the concepts of what it is that we're trying to offer, and they may be making decisions just based on the fact that they don't want to spend money, not comparing that spend to a specific value that they're going to obtain from working with us. Then what I might be more inclined to do is say, hey, listen, you know what, I completely understand that you're working within a specific budget here. Tell me, like, would it be worth it for me to ask you a couple questions, get a better understanding of what it is that you're trying to accomplish, tell you how I think we can fit in, and then explore how we might be able to work with you on price or engage around what that actually looks like for you. And most people, I think, are going to be cool with that, but I think the real answer to that question is mostly in how educated is our prospect, and how do we actually know that they're educated? Yeah,
definitely. And so, you've got a pretty good pulse on that. You're training your reps to keep an eye out for these nuggets and these questions that come up, and obviously see patterns that keep happening. What about, what are some like classic, objections that you have to get over, and what are some of the things you do to get over those right now?
Yeah, I mean, objections are all over the place, right? There's going to be very rarely a call that you're on where you're not hearing some sort of sales objection. I think the key is salespeople generally want to combat an objection. I think the idea is that you understand the objection. Mm-hmm. So instead of running away from whatever that is, right? If somebody says, oh yeah, but I'm just a little bit concerned about price, it's like the salesperson naturally is like, well, we can discount. Tell me, like, what would be the right price, right? Like, you don't really want to run into it like that. Let's seek to understand. You're concerned about price. Tell me more about that. Like, why are you concerned about that? Mm-hmm. How significant is that objection to you? Like, really kind of starting to develop a true understanding of it. And specifically, I think going back to what we originally started talking about in our qualification matrix and those questions we're asking in the discovery, I'd go as far as to say, geez, if we're getting the same freaking objections on every single call, how do we insert a couple questions as early on to our discovery as possible? It's going to surface that objection very early on, and potentially, if we're really good, ask the question in a light that automatically combats that objection early on, but getting the prospect to overcome that objection for themselves as early on in the call as possible. So I think it's just taking inventory and being thoughtful about what objections you're hearing most often as a team, and having some way to record and understand that, and then working that back into your general line of questioning as early as possible to understand those things and get ahead of them rather than having them come up late. But we want the objections. That's good for us.
Yeah. I mean, it's targeted leads, and then also getting ahead of it making sure that if you see this pattern, too often, or you have either some kind of judo maneuver where you're anticipating that objection and you use that objection to your strength, or getting ahead of it in a way where it's addressed way before this person enters this part of your pipeline, or even this conversation, so you're not wasting a lot of time here. Now, there are always going to be objections as you go, but the big sticking ones, the ones that can't be overcome, you want to push those. You want to get those as close to the beginning as possible. Obviously, you don't want to waste a lot of time if you can avoid it. What technology are you like? What is your team armed with in terms of even management and reps when it comes to this process? So let's say on the management side, are they tracking calls? Are they tracking activity by the reps? And then on the rep side, what are they able to use to, is there coaching software or anything like that you guys have in play? And you can include your own software, of course, but what else? What's part of that stack?
Yeah, totally. So I think I'm a big proponent of sales technology, right? That's my living. I'm in the sales technology space. That is what our company offers and that we're out there offering to help people with every single day. With that being said, I think too much of it is probably pretty detrimental. And I think the idea is generally to stay as basic as possible, because really at the end of the day, this thing is about simplicity and it's about selling. And you want your systems, you want all this stuff to be as simple as possible, because you could have 20 different types of softwares, but if you're logging into all of them constantly and doing all this stuff, you're probably not actually doing your job, and you're probably not on the phone selling your solution, right? So I think you want to really maximize for or optimize for simplicity and optimize for just an understanding of what's happening and making a salesperson's workflow as easy as possible. I think that's the big trend, right? In the sales software space, is that traditionally a lot of these things are built for me. They're built for leadership. They're built for being able to make a great dashboard, but the workflow is so terrible for the sales team that the dashboard never gets populated with any of the information. So I think as sales leaders, it's our responsibility to optimize our systems to be as easy for our teams to use and to work with as possible, and trying to keep workflows as simple as possible and not create a lot of new logins or new things that we're asking salespeople to actually log into and do. So for me, we have, truthfully, it's a very simple thing that we look at. We look at dashboards and we say to our look like. We ask ourselves, how are we doing against lead generation versus our goals that we know we need to hit our revenue targets? How are we doing as a sales team of executing against those leads? If we generated 100 leads and sales has only followed up with 40 of them, what the heck are we doing? We're looking at activity. And we're looking at how many calls, how many emails, how many dials are we making, what are we actually doing against those leads every day. We're looking at opportunity creation. We're looking at meetings held. We're looking at demos delivered. And we're looking at current pipeline, current closed won, and future pipeline that we're generating. So it's a very simple thing. We're mostly focused on just making it as easy as possible for the sales team to get that data entered into the system in a way that's going to give us the reporting that we need, and to simplify that flow as much as humanly possible to really keep us focused on doing our jobs, doing the work, and also automating to where if I'm walking around on the floor and I'm watching a bunch of salespeople that we pay a bunch of money to doing tasks that it looks like a robot could do, I should probably employ a robot, and not a salesperson that costs however many dollars a year. So simplicity is the key with the whole thing to me.
Yeah, definitely. And the technology should be supporting the sales reps, not replacing the sales reps. Obviously, they have a very important job. And one of the most important pieces of this is closing. So, in your pitch, kind of went over objections and pricing and call scripts. What are some closing? What are ways that you're closing the deal? And I don't like to use closing. I don't know, the word tactics for closing seems kind of like used car salesman-y. But what are some of the ways you're making sure that reps are following through, getting the deals done, and kind of having happy prospects become happy customers?
Totally. So I have a story that's fresh in my mind here, which I'll share because I came full circle on this pretty recently. So I recently got into a new role here at HubSpot, and in my old role, we didn't have too many tight processes around discounting or approvals or any of these types of things. And in my new role, there's like all these, like if a salesperson submits for a discount, I need to approve it, and it goes through kind of a little bit of an approval process. And early on, I'm sitting here and I get all these approvals. I'm just like, yeah, approve, like whatever. Yeah, we're selling. It's gonna be great. I'm seeing all these deals come through. I'm so happy, and I'm making the classic mistake. And so then I said, okay, you know what? I'm actually going to ask about a couple of these. And I'm going to ask like why we're giving a discount, like what's going on, whatever it is. And so I walk over to a salesperson. I would say like, hey, so this deal here, you submitted it for a discount. When is the prospect planning on signing the document? When are they planning on getting started? They'd say to me, oh, they just wanted to see a quote. I'm just sending the quote over. Like, what? So you're just going to send a payment link and you don't even have any concept? You're offering a discount. You're sending this payment link. You don't even know when this deal is going to close? Like, this is asinine to me. We're giving up all of this. We're giving up all of this discount, and we're not even getting anything in return. It's like we're giving it away. I'm like, what the heck's going on here? So I think the story is to say, right? Like, it's about keeping leverage throughout the process. If you're going to give something, you have to get something in return. There's a give-get as it comes to closing. I think the first question when you move into a closing sequence is, are you convinced that this solution is going to do what you want it to do from a value standpoint? And are you sure that this is what you want to do? Like, is this going to work for you based on what I've told you? Do you want to go with HubSpot? Is that your choice? And they say yes, but you got to work with me on this, and this, or whatever. And it's like, okay. At that point in time, it just becomes a give-get. But I think it's a very clear value demonstration, which leads to say price aside or terms aside or whatever it is. This is my decision. This is what I want to do. And then from there, you're not giving up anything without getting something in return. So if the prospect wants a discount or they want different price terms, great. I can walk down to the finance office right now and I can go check and I can ask for that. When I do, what they're going to ask me back is when is the order going to be executed? What should I say?
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So you're having that conversation with your reps, and that becomes something that you implement into the process. So what is it? And this is getting a little outside, more of a managerial perspective here. But when you come up with something like that, that's like, okay, well, we're having a problem here in our process. This is where we're getting hung up. We need to put this into the flow somewhere. We need to put this into training and onboarding. What's that look like for your team? Oh, this is something we didn't anticipate happening that keeps happening often. How do we make this part of training and onboarding?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think what's interesting is that, and what I've found is when the sales team operates in a vacuum, and the sales team says, okay, we're sales, and we control sales, and we control everything in our own world, and we focus on that. You get into trouble, actually, that way. What I try to do is I try to be very inclusive of all of the other departments that exist within our business, and I try to bring those folks into all of our active discussions. So if we're doing a team call review, or if we're having a sales meeting, or any of these things, folks from the product team are invited, folks from the marketing team are invited, folks from our services organization are invited, and folks from our training organization are invited. I have an open door to every team at HubSpot who wants to get involved with sales and who wants to understand what we're working on, because I genuinely believe if I can do a good job at surfacing the problems that sales is having to everybody else in our organization, that our friends want to help us. And people will have our back and they'll find that. So, to your question, if we're seeing the same stuff coming up of being a need for training, I've got the leader of our learning and development group sitting in all of our team conversations. They already know, and they're already ahead of that, and they're identifying that with their own eyes, and they're seeing it. They're understanding the scope of the problem, and they're going back and starting to create materials to help in an early onboarding of a salesperson that's going to make that better.
My last question before we get into audience questions, I found a nugget in there that I wanted to drill into. that I wanted to dip, I guess, in your terms.
You like ketchup or barbecue sauce, honey mustard? What's your style?
I'm all ketchup. Sometimes I do a little sriracha ketchup if I'm feeling frisky.
Straight
So
ketchup.
let's get into the that content management piece right there. So what do you have, like a knowledge base, a resource base, a content management piece, or something? How are all your reps keeping track of this stuff? I think we have an audience of a mixture of small and large companies, and I think at every stage, no matter what, you kind of struggle to keep all this stuff in one place, keep it all nice and neat, make sure for training and onboarding purposes that everybody has access to it early on, and then there's always new stuff coming out. So how do you keep track of that? How do you update it? What does that process look like? It's an important part of the pitch process.
Yeah, totally. So I think the key to this here is having the way it's laid out as a pretty crisp structure needing to be important. Like we have this, we have like a wiki. It's like like an intranet that we use here at HubSpot, and you can post a page on this wiki, and it could be about anything. It could be about negotiation. It could be about discovery. It could be about whatever you want it to be. And if there's not some central location that links back to that has structure to it of where it falls in the process, nobody will ever find that thing ever again. People are generally horrible. Every person is generally horrible at going and finding information that's not organized in a crisp and concise manner. So for me, what we have is we have a sales team homepage. And on the homepage, literally, we have just resources. It's like things you need to know about and links that you need before you even begin to think about doing your job. And then it's like sales process, all the parts of our sales process, links to all the supporting documentation for all those pieces. Negotiation, legal, T's and C's, whatever it is. There's one page that you can go to if you're on our sales team, and you can link to resources that will give you every answer to the question that you'd ever need to be able to find that stuff. But that stuff is kind of helpful. I think the bigger thing is having managers that are really doing a nice job of working with their teams and understanding their salespeople and setting up good regular coaching cadences to where the managers are very in sync with what type of help that each salesperson needs, and the managers are actually leading a lot of that coaching and helping to surface a lot of that information to a salesperson in a way that is going to resonate with them in a way that they're going to really be able to consume it best. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to sales management when you're trying to do a great job at sharing information with the population.
Yeah, definitely. I want to know so much more about the technology and the process there, but we're going to get to audience questions right now for another 10 to 15 minutes. If you guys have any questions at all, there's a questions tab in the GoToWebinar panel. Ask your questions in there. The first one that we have here is, how do you get your prospect excited about your product? So is there like a hype train or something you guys start out with that's just like product excitement? I'd imagine that, it's maybe different for inbound and outbound, but you can talk about the different stages and what that kind of looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to do it, right, is to understand what's the pains, or the best way from my experience at least, is to understand what are the actual pains, what are the problems that prospect is having today. And you do that through the discovery process. You do that through earning trust early on and asking a lot of those questions. I think where that starts to become a really nice pitch and where you get a really nice play in there is just the simple concept. There's all these different kind of ways and methodologies to tell stories and to give great contrast and things. And I think actually our executive team at HubSpot, Brian Halligan, folks like Mark Roberge, right, guys who are just super, super compelling. They just have this very simple thread that they do of contrast. And the contrast is black and white, yesterday and today. The pain you have now, great, you're going to feel tomorrow. This huge issue that you have and how it's going to get fixed. And I think it's just this very simple contrast of understanding the current state of somebody, painting that picture of why it's so bad today, and then releasing that tension as we look to tomorrow. Just that simple motion of contrast, even if it's in a couple specific areas of pain that somebody's having, is I think going to be the simplest, most straightforward way to really drive a very compelling pitch that somebody's going to be truly understanding, eternalizing, and understanding the benefits to them.
Awesome. I have a two-parter. I made it a two-parter. There's really two different questions, but they're kind of close together here. So one person asked, how do you manage a team of 100 reps? And then another person asked, how do you manage a virtual relationship between a rep and a manager? Now, I want to ask you, what is your, I guess, rep to manager ratio? Do you have virtual, reps? What does that look like internally for you guys? What would be your advice to them?
Yeah, so my advice is as the team starts getting big, what you really need is you need a leadership team and a management team that's all on the same page. What you cannot have is you cannot have sales management not acting like a team. So our ratio about that we feel really comfortable with is 1 sales manager for 9 quota-carrying salespeople. That's a really comfortable ratio for us where we feel like each person is truly getting good development, the manager has enough time to spend with them, and the manager can really dig in and be focused first and foremost on coaching. I think when you start scaling up, you start to realize that, geez, if I have 10 managers out there all saying different things and all coaching in different ways, pretty soon it becomes pretty hard to have a handle on the organization. So what we do on my team is we actually have 2 sessions a week where the management team gets together, and we just basically, it's just alignment sessions really, and I work mostly on just getting great alignment with the sales managers on the team. We listen to calls, just the managers, and we discuss them together, and we form norms, and we really get everyone bought in on the way that we want to coach these calls and how we should be out there talking through this stuff. We get bought in on our hiring process and how we do team hiring and how we, any process that we have or anything that we're doing, we discuss together what our kind of core beliefs and norms are on that process. And at the end of the day, basic rule is you get in a room, everybody has a voice, we're all on the same team, but we make a decision as a team and we roll with it as a team. And once the decision's made, we go with it until we choose to reevaluate the decision as a leadership team. So it's really about leaning on that front line of management.
What's the rep to manager ratio?
9 to 1 for us.
9 to 1 right now. Okay. And any virtual? Remote?
Any
remote reps?
Yeah, remote reps. That's an interesting one. We do have salespeople that work remotely, but they're all veterans. We don't have any new salespeople or ramping salespeople that are working remotely. We try our best to have folks in the office getting coaching, very hands-on early on, and then when a salesperson, we actually have quite a few salespeople who get to a point where they say, "Hey, Boston's cold, man. I'm trying to go down." We have a salesperson on our team who lives in South Carolina. We have somebody who moved to a bunch of people actually who moved to California. If you're doing awesome and you're great and you're producing, we feel very comfortable with the remote setup, but not for somebody early who we're really trying to coach up and make sure they have a great handle on the process.
Yeah. What do you recommend in terms of resources for some of the people trying to figure out? We do have a lot of managers and directors in this webinar today. So I guess from both perspectives, from a rep perspective and from someone managing a team, what resources do you recommend? What books do you recommend? Where should people go and learn more about not only building the perfect pitch and nailing that, but building out something repeatable and scalable for a team, kind of in this manner?
Yeah, so I'll tell you the stuff that I really like. When it comes to sales, there is no better book, in my opinion, than Mark Roberge's book, The Sales Acceleration Formula. I don't know anybody in the sales space as thoughtful or like on Mark's level. Mark is fantastic, and I recommend The Sales Acceleration Formula to every sales leader. It's so tremendously simple and powerful. I think that's a great resource. Also, for me personally, the things that I'm reading right now is I really like, I just read Mike Krzyzewski, the Duke basketball coach. I read his book called Leading with the Heart. Absolutely fantastic. I pulled out a lot of awesome stuff from that I've been using and that I really appreciated. I think I personally enjoy from a sales leadership perspective, understanding how leaders in other disciplines think about things and trying to translate some of those concepts to what we're doing in sales. As far as from a books that I really like in terms of for salespeople how to do their job, I mean, the HubSpot Sales blog is putting out tremendous material. I love the HubSpot Sales blog. I really like Sales Hacker and what you guys are doing. You guys put out a ton of awesome stuff. From a books perspective, there's a book called The Best Damn Sales Book Ever, which is a really good one. It's really more motivational in nature for a salesperson, and how to think about running your own business and how to think about keeping that motivation behind your business, that I think is extremely powerful. And from a very tactical standpoint, I really like Aaron Ross's Predictable Revenue. I think that's a fantastic read as well for any salesperson early on.
I just had to look up The Best Damn Sales Book. So that looks good. Okay, that's on the reading list.
It's cool. It's not like a super tactical thing of like, hey, sell it this way, or here's how you do a discovery or whatever it is. But I think when I'm talking to salespeople, like a lot of companies and a lot of salespeople that are in there, they have a framework. They understand tactically what the job is. Where a lot of people go wrong is, frankly, riding that roller coaster, baby. You're pumped up today. You're depressed tomorrow. You're really depressed the next day, and then you're back on cloud nine. And I think the Best Damn Sales book just kind of helps you hone your mindset towards doing the job every single day. And for me, what I see is the thing that separates the truly great salespeople from folks that are very average is very rarely their sales acumen or their sales ability. It's much more often their approach to the work. And the Best Damn Sales book, I think, is really a cool read to help you just kind of refine your focus.
I used to carry around The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. It's like a small, tiny book. And you can put it in your backpack, carry it around with you, but it was all mental. When you get into sales, when you first get into sales, you really need to have thick skin and short memory and really keep remembering why you're doing what you're doing, whatever that reason is. If you're passionate about it, you'll be good at it. You gotta get there mentally. And it's tough. It's a tough road. You can get beat up pretty bad, especially selling from a startup. There's no logo behind you. You're kind of going from scratch. You can be creating an industry sometimes, but a lot of it's mental. So a lot of the pitch stuff that we're even going through right now, a lot of it, you do two of the same pitches, and one is done in a monotone, no passion, no energy behind it. Another one has inflection in their voice, and they're really excited about it. I guarantee you have two very different, results. So, I think that's one of the things that's kind of overlooked when we're talking about kind of the art of the pitch. It's one thing that we don't talk about that much, but maybe that's a good question for you. What are some ways you get people up and motivated and energy and passion, and even a step before that, how do you make sure you're hiring those people to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, interviewing for sales desire is it's an art form. I mean, how do you do that? So we really look very hard at sales desire, and we've tested tons and tons of questions that try to give us insight into who really wants to do sales and who is kind of doing it because it's a job and it's something to do, right? So I think sales desire is like the number one thing I'm interviewing for, and just how bad do you really want to do this? And you can feel that. Things that we do, I never understood how a salesperson could sit down and have a conversation. One thing we've got in our office is we got all the standing desks. I'm constantly encouraging salespeople, hey, when you're on the phone, stand up. Get into it, walk around, move a little bit, have some fun with it. We're playing music on the sales floor all day long. We're really trying to create an upbeat, positive atmosphere. We're trying to get people up. We're trying to move, and we're trying to get excited about what we're doing. And I think it's another thing too. It's a function of, are you excited about what you're actually doing? I think that at HubSpot, our mission is so cool of helping small and medium-sized businesses to actually meaningfully grow and to change the way that they market and sell, to actually be matched with the way that people are researching and buying stuff today. I think that is so cool, and every time I get on the phone, it never gets old to me to be on the phone doing one of those conversations and to be showing somebody a new perspective on how to grow their business. I think that's another thing just to be testing for in the interview process is why do you think this job is cool? Is it just because you can make some money here, you can do this, or are you actually interested in what we're doing? I think that's a big piece of it.
Great. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you or continue asking you questions? You on Twitter, LinkedIn?
You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. And my email is mpici@hubspot.com. So feel free to reach out. Any additional questions or things you want to mention, or if you just want to tell me I stink, feel free.
Great. We had some people write in questions about kind of some hiring tactics and tips here. We're coming up on the 50 marker, so we're going to let everybody get back to their day jobs. But thank you so much, Michael, for joining us here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you have more questions, you heard the man, reach out to him. Reach out to both of us on Twitter. We'll get back to you on there for sure, and then LinkedIn, email. But thanks a lot for joining us, Michael. That was great.
My last plug is Sell Like a Human. It's a brand new podcast that HubSpot just came out with. It's with Dan Pink, and we bring on a special guest every single time. The next one is actually with Seth Godin. So super cool,
That's
awesome podcast. Check it out.
Yeah, Dan Pink is amazing. Seth Godin was at our last conference in New York, was incredible. That's definitely awesome. Sell like a Human?
Sell Like a Human, baby.
That's the name of his book too, isn't it? Something like that.
To Sell as Human is his book.
That's it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool, man.
I think because Dan's with us, though, I don't think it counts as plagiarism. Pretty sure.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everyone.